Like she turns into the sexy lady
A
wolf.
sexy wolf that looks like a fox because a sexy wolf is a fox, right? Like a.
I mean,
Welcome to Critical Café,
join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage,
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome to Critical Cafe, where we talk all things Critical Role, and this time we're going to talk about episode 41 of Campaign 3. My name's Brian, and this is Crystal.
Hi.
And thanks for joining us. And also, like we mentioned last time, if you would like to support the show and buy us a coffee for our Critical Cafe, you can do so by checking out the... and also, if you want to pick up one of our delicious design mugs, you can go over to our Etsy shop. We've got them on sale as well. So check everything out in the... That's right, yeah. And you can have some coffee while we're chatting. So check everything down in the doobly-doo below. And we will get right into it. So here we go with episode 41 of Campaign 3. Okay, so first half was really interesting. We came off of a bit of an extended break last time, and then right back into things with this episode. So we knew that they were going to be starting out with some sort of trial with the Gargini and what Chetney was going to have to do. So yeah, why don't you kick us off? What are we starting with today?
Well, so, last episode really went over them getting into the town and kind of getting settled, and then knowing that they're going to go and do this trial. So when we start this episode, they are waking up in the morning and knowing that they're going to set out for the Savrolo, I think I said that right, which is the Temple of the Savage Heart, which is the place where the trial that Chetney has to undergo, or is choosing to undergo, to kind of short circuit all of the training that, would take weeks and weeks and weeks. I don't really know if it necessarily completely negates it as much as it's kind of the quickest way that they can give him some control immediately, maybe.
He's using the cheat codes.
Yeah. He's zipping to the end. He's reading the back of the book.
Yeah, exactly.
But so really, it just starts out with them leaving for that. And, along the way, they come across some panthers or some werecats of some, they're not even werecats. What were they?
It was almost like tigers, right? Like they had this tiger stripe, but the stripes were going in a different direction. They were more of almost like a white color, if I remember right. Which they had to do sort of a
phantasm something, or a tiger or something.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool seeing a little bit more of the wildlife in that area and how the Gorgini are interacting with them, which was kind of cool seeing them sort of, assert dominance in a way, or at least say, hey, we are hunters too. And so that was cool. And then also the whole crazy travel thing, you had Fern, who was, being Fern along the way. So
she decided to take shrooms and get high. Right. And then she got FCG to try one in the hopes that maybe he would feel something, and which didn't happen.
Him too. It was him trying to figure out how much down the path, because he's all trying to do this whole literal soul searching, right? He's trying to figure out more about him. So it was kind of cool that they worked it in that way, but yeah, it was a little ridiculous at the same time.
And I feel like it's a lot of Sam too, always pushing the buck. He's always got to try to
but
pull
Ashley
something
really
else
started
out.
that this time, so I think it was a lot.
Yeah, but he was the one that started talking about how shamans have this transcendent dream, and they can really touch the other side, and from a therapy point of view. And then he asked her to try to get in touch with the change bringer for him. You remember that where
I do remember that. Yeah,
she in her high state somehow talks to a beetle bug that has a human face. that says hi, you know,
Yeah.
and then it flies into her forehead, I guess, and gives her a hug or something, you know.
You know, but like again, the mark of a great DM in Matt Mercer, and
Yeah.
like how he described
It's so
what she was
ridiculous.
seeing, and then describing the fact that they were like, you know, hey, just a bug just landed on her head.
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
know, it's really well done. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know, you could tell these guys improv quite a bit at the table, and it's sort of that other skill. By the way, like with as funny as that is, and as like, you know, kind of off the cuff as that is, it also shows this is also part of D&D, right? Like people do stupid stuff and
Yeah.
say silly things at D&D tables all the time. That's kind of a rite of passage too. So in a lot of ways, I kind of like that is still happening, you know, like it still kind of like reinforces that it's still a D&D game, guys. It's not
Right.
just a
Well,
show. It's still them playing D&D. So
and they do this all the time. So at what
mhm,
point do you have new content? You know, like you just keep pushing. You keep
yeah,
pushing the envelope because you don't want it to get boring. You want it to be fun. You want it to be
yeah, that's
lighthearted. I mean,
true.
they're making money doing that these days. So, you know, you don't want your passion to become your job. At
Yeah,
least if it
that's
does, you don't
totally
want it to
true.
feel like it is, you know?
Yeah,
So I feel like some of this crazy stuff is to just kind of keep the table fresh, you know, and everybody just be like,
that's a really good point.
"Oh, here we
Yeah.
go," you know,
I think it's a great
chaos
point from,
factor.
yeah, it's a great point from like, you know, keeping things fresh from a show perspective, but also just from a playing the game perspective. You know, like if you played that amount of like those hours, which many people do, many people have a weekly game that's been going on for years. But I think um, if you play as much D&D as they're playing, and that is not including all the one shots they do and the other games that they work on, and some of them are still running home games and stuff too. So like when you play that much D&D, you also like to mix things up, right? Like even if it
Yeah,
wasn't a show. So it's kind of like it's a great point, like that they are keeping things fun and exciting for people watching, but also for themselves so they don't get bored at the table. You know, like
yes,
you want to make sure that you're doing things that are like, you know, that's why they created these characters, and she created Fern, which was that type of character that would just go grab things and go,
she
oh, I'll try
she's
that.
yeah,
So
she's by far my favorite character Ashley's ever
me
played.
too. Yeah.
I like Pike. But there's something about the mischievous
Yeah.
Fern, the chaotic Fern, like just the sweet, kind of innocent, oh, I'm gonna see what happens if I do this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's shiny. I want to take it. You know, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a different side of Ashley.
I agree.
And I think it really, you know, she was out of the game so much last season playing Yasha. And I think she's in this game consistently this go round, and you can tell like the character has developed
Yeah.
so much more than did really.
I think
um
so.
she did a great job with Yasha, but you know, I feel like we know Fern, you know, like,
Yeah. Well, I
so
also think that like they all legitimately as characters and also uh, as players don't know what she's gonna do, and
yeah,
and I think that's pretty legitimate. Like I think there was a point, I can't remember if it was in the first half or the second half, but there was a point um, where well maybe it was in the second half when they get ready to go in, but anyway, where they kind of give the warning: if you take anything, make sure you ask first, and
yeah.
then like Sam's like, I would do an inside check to see if I actually believe her. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, she's going to try to do her best. But like, Sam says, I don't know if I believe Ashley Johnson right now. Like, he was like, I don't know if I believe you. It's a little
Yes. I
Fern,
mean,
which I
how
think is
you're
really
right,
kind
and
of
how
fun. So,
liberating is it to play that type of character
yeah.
where you
Yeah.
literally are just like, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna touch this button and find out, see what happens, you know? I mean, and the group
Well,
really knows that's what you're gonna do. So while they groan and they moan, they know you're gonna do it, you know?
you also like have to have a lot of trust in the people at the table. I can remember not that many months ago when we were playing a game and we had one of our characters that was going to touch this magical orb. And I remember someone else at the table being very like upset about
No,
that person going over and
do
touching.
not. touch the magical glowing orb that the bad people are trying to take and hoard.
Totally would have been an Ashley thing to do, right? Like, or a Fern thing to do. So, like I said, it
Yeah.
happens in every D&D table. There's always something like this that happens, and the mix of the group always kind of dictates how it's received.
Well, and
So
my thing is,
it's
like, I probably would touch it, but it would be in a controlled environment, not in the middle of, like, let's run through this
nope.
place randomly and touch this while we go, Like,
Yeah, but
no, no, no,
she's not
no, no,
just
no,
touching
no.
stuff. She's walking through an unknown
Pocketing
jungle
it.
and
I
going,
know.
"Oh, let me just eat this." Like, it's
That he
who knows what that means.
described as, like,
Yeah.
neon colored. And we all know nature gives itself fluorescent colors to warn away predators. So, of
Well,
course,
that's
she's
some
going to
on the
eat
fly.
it.
That's some on the fly Matt Mercer DMing to figure out what the effects are going to be.
Ridiculous.
That was pretty good.
And
Okay,
you're
so
poisoned.
then they continue on. They continue
Yes.
on with this trip, and they're getting closer. And then along the way, I think this happens in the first half. Along the way, Chetney kind of explores a little bit about who he is, and some of the, the rituals that he can perform and the glyphs and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, doesn't he also dive into that a little bit?
Yes. So Annalyn approaches him and asks him to show her his glyph work. And he is clueless. He's like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Glyph work. And she's like, you did it earlier. Whenever you were preparing to fight or you were doing whatever, or you were showing me your hemocraft, you cut into yourself. And that was a glyph. It was crude, but, what all do you know? And he's like, nothing. He didn't even know it was really glyph work. He just thought he was cutting himself, So she talked with him a lot about that and pretty much just, told him he's got a lot to learn, but she showed him some things and I think kind of expanded his knowledge on runes. So I think that's something that can like flourish more and he can grow, like he can learn more about it and he can grow more. But I think she imparted like his whole body lit up.
Yeah.
So, I'm not quite sure if they stay with him or if it's just a visual so that he can see them and, have something to kind of visually access back to later. Or if they're on his body like a tattoo now. I know they glowed and then they went away, but I kind of figured that they were probably just temporary. He could see how many there were,
So, yeah, it was really, really cool. Like, I love scenes like that. And this is, I think, and this is just my speculation, but I've seen him do this over other campaigns too. This is a way for a dungeon master to build into the story itself ways in which a character would naturally progress and level up. Like, he knew that by the end of this, if everything went well, they were going to level up. They actually did, spoilers, but they level up at the end, right? But the idea is, what does that really mean in the game, right? Like, what does that really, just leveling up from a game mechanic perspective is easy to comprehend, but what does that mean from a narrative perspective? What does it mean when you learn a new spell? What does it mean when you get this new ability? An example.
How do you even know as the character?
Yeah, exactly. A good example, Imogen was able to do. I think she had a feat that she was given, or she had something else, and like it was built into that plot line. Like when things happened, and she had the big ruinous flare and all that kind of stuff. It was built into the story. I think this is probably some of his Let Hunter stuff that are built in, like knowing those runes are probably things that you get at this level where you learn how to do these things. I don't know, I can't remember, so someone correct me in the comments below if you've heard of this stuff. Yeah, but like it's kind of cool to work that in as much as possible, right? Like I just think it's a nice way, and it's a good example for what you can do with the game, to take a game mechanic and turn it into a narrative element. And it makes it much cooler, I think. It makes it much more like you connect with it from the same perspective. One of the things that we did in the game that we were playing back when we were live streaming our game earlier this year, and I kind of threw in there, was I wanted a magic item that would connect to a character that would also connect to her abilities and change over time, which is why I kind of came up with the idea of a Talum, which is sort of this piece of jewelry that was an heirloom, but it can take the shape of a bow or a sword, which was this ranger's key weapons, right? So it was sort of a thing that I wanted to tie in from a narrative perspective. Had I done it differently, I might have also, when other people were leveling up, had a reason for example, I would have worked into the story your druid character's ability to take the star shape, but I didn't have to because you built it in, and you would talk about like how you were studying the constellations and you were testing things out and you were working through it. So like even when the players are able to do it, I think it's a good thing, right? Like, you know, from a player's perspective, you already built it. Well, no, but what I'm saying is like, it's great to go that way because like it made it so much more important to you, and the other players didn't know.
Right.
Like it was, so it made it like, oh, what is happening now? Like, and I think that's what's cool about like the way Matt does stuff too, is he reveals things not only to the player that has the thing happen, like the glyphs and things like that, but you could see everybody else's face at the table going, oh, what? This is so awesome, right? Like, because it makes it like, oh, this other person, like the character I know it has something cool about them. So I think sometimes that gets overshadowed. Like sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, that was a cool element. They're learning this thing. Happened in campaign 2 with Bo. Like I think early in the campaign where she would get taken away and her master would fight her and spar with her. And then she would end up learning to do a different ability, right? It's the same type of thing, but like it just makes it part of the story. So anyway, I really like that part.
Yeah, I do too. And you can really tell like when the cool stuff is happening with like Laura, her husband has no clue. Travis has no. He's over there like, what? Hey, what? What do you mean? What is this? You know, like he's so affronted that she didn't let him know that her and Matt had been working on something, or that Matt had said something to her, or that maybe she didn't know about something, but somewhere along the way, somebody knew something he didn't know. So about her character, his expressions are so funny to me because he's always like, oh, what's happening? But yeah,
absolutely,
it is. It's enjoyable, and you could tell it's genuine. That's part of it. It's you know, it lends that genuine aspect to it, of it being more improv versus scripted. You know, we've talked about that before.
All right, so let's take a quick break to get a cup of coffee, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, for the second half, they've had their break. They get ready to go into this place, trying to start the trial, and then the descriptions are very vivid, like of what everything looks like as they enter in. So let's take it from there. They're coming back and going into this area, which I thought was a very cool description of like how this is going to all play out. It kind of lets you know that there are some things coming very soon. So what was your take on as they're like headed into this place?
I think you can kind of feel the presence of like greatness, or, you know, divinity, or that there's something that's important that that place is important to them, you know, or just important, period. So I thought it was really cool. So I enjoyed it.
It's sort of like anytime you have like ruins, it just automatically implies that there was something really important that happened there, right? Or that the place is used for. So yeah, I was digging the descriptions of everything. So then it was sort of one of those things where like it wasn't really evident right away what this trial was going to be, right? Like it was sort of like they're coming in and just playing it by ear, looking around, seeing what's going on.
I mean, Annalyn just told him he needed to give an offering and meditate. You know, and it's like, what, afternoon whenever they get there? Yep. And so Chetney just gives his offering, which is, I think he just gave a bunch of platinum, didn't he? And then he gets in front of the statue, and he starts trying to meditate. And he meditates. He meditates for hours without anything happening, which I thought was crazy. But, you know, he's getting put to the test. So
Yeah, and the like overhead, there's sort of like this open sky uh, where you've got moonlight coming in. Is
there's
that
a
the
hole in
point
the a hole
where
in the ceiling. Yeah.
you got like the hole in the ceiling?
So the
And
sun,
then
there's light coming in all during the evening while they're there, and then as it's getting dark outside, as it's getting night outside, the moonlight starts coming in. But
right,
it's this weird, like Chetney, it's this weird knowing that the angle isn't right for Katha's moonlight to be streaming in. So it's just this real mysterious kind of, knowledge that it's not really positioned for it to properly be moonlight.
yeah,
So,
and then that's when things start happening, right? Like that's
yes.
when he starts changing, and he starts to have that. Was it the red energy that happened first? Like, how did it? I can't remember if it was him seeing something. I think he had like a flash, right?
Yeah, there is like kind of a red flash behind his eyes, but he starts feeling emotions that aren't his first.
He,
And he starts hearing words. And then he gets he gets asked three different
that's right.
questions by
Yeah,
this entity or what, and it's not really like he doesn't really hear the words as much as they're impressed upon him. Shidon is the spirit, the bestial spirit that is I think the spirit of the wild mother. It's a spirit of the wild mother. Um, and who they've really kind of come seeking out so that Chetney can do this trial. And so he starts having these questions kind of pressed on him. And he starts trying to answer them, I think, the best of his ability, but they're a little confusing, I mean,
yeah,
there's not really a whole lot of context, and I think he answers them to the best of his ability, but you could kind of tell at a certain point he didn't really know if he was saying the right stuff. So it was kind of fun.
yeah,
So his like first one, was "Are you hunter or prey?" And of course, Chetney says hunter,
right,
and the spirit impresses upon him that he's hunter and prey. Which, I mean, of course, everybody
right.
is, right? I mean, there's the whole circle of life, and there's always a bigger thing out there that can take you down. So, and then I think the next one is, do you seek freedom or indulgence? And this one was the one that was interesting to me.
He said, I think he said he seeks freedom.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It called him a fool, and then it was, do you seed the garden or spoil the earth?
yeah.
And I
And he
think he was
said,
a little confused on this one, because it took him a second, and then he said spoil the earth. So,
and then she said that he was the catalyst, right? Interesting that like those were phrased the way they were. Um, I and then it just seems like it moved pretty quickly into the glowing eye thing. All of the other Gorgini kind of like also having that look and kind of standing out to the side, and then the transformation starts beginning, which I think everybody thought it was just him transforming into his regular werewolf form. But no, he's this gigantic, version of
yeah,
this creature, right?
yeah, yeah.
To which Matt hands him another sheet
I
and says,
know.
"Here you go. Here's your abilities." And that made everybody go like, "Uh oh!" And then battle
And then he put
commences
the mini on
basically.
the map.
Oh,
That
huge,
was
right? Like, yeah,
massive, massive werewolf.
yeah,
It was crazy. It was
it was
crazy.
crazy. Makes me
And
think
it
like maybe that'll come back at some point. So yeah,
maybe he'll have like a hybrid form or something, like
yeah,
the infusion of bestial spirit.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean and I think, pretty much right away he's mad. He's like lost to the red haze, like
Yeah.
Instantly, like he had that itch, that itch, that itch, and he ripped everything out and he became this massive, huge werewolf. And he just started running after everybody. And
Yeah.
what was funny to me is that the group thought they were really doing something beforehand. They set out caltrops, they set out like traps, they did all kinds of stuff to all the entrances because they
Yeah.
thought that something was going to try to come in
And they'd
or
be working together with him or
right,
helping him
right.
somehow.
They had
Yeah.
no clue that he was going to have to fight them while the
I
Gorgini were
mean,
kind of like on the sidelines in a trance, you know? So,
the only
I
thing
mean,
I kind of thought that he was going to end up having to fight then, but I thought it was, I thought it may have been a little different. I thought maybe the Gorgini would have also changed and been part of it, like, and it was one big fight. And, but no, I kind of liked this better.
yes.
The way it turned out, like, especially we were talking about it, I think while we were watching it, and it was like, this whole analogy of, again, this is game mechanic and story, right? Because he's fighting, but he's also, as he loses, it's his character gaining control, even though he's losing, like the
Right.
big guy is losing. So I thought that was a really, really interesting way of having this work. So anyway,
Right.
it's good stuff.
Well, because the whole point is for him to learn control over his beast. So what better way than to give him unchecked power and people around him that he cares about and he loves and he has spent time with that he could genuinely do great harm to if he doesn't figure it out, you know? I mean, it really is the ultimate trial, you know. Props to Matt on that. And I kind of felt like that he might have to fight them too, but I didn't know it was going to happen like that, you know. Like I think that how Matt did it was really cool, like making him like supersized and super strong. I mean, he had legendary like actions, he had reactions, he had all kinds of crazy crap. So which they were all freaking out about. And Travis is like the best to give that to because he's just like geeking out in the corner. He's like, oh, this is awesome.
But of course he is. I get to be the ultimate werewolf and try to kill everybody.
And the first thing he does is he kills Mister. You know? It's like he just goes over and demolishes the monkey. And they're like, no, not Mister.
You know,
I was like,
if you're going to demolish anybody, demolishing Mister is probably not a bad choice if you get, because he can come back. Everybody else
and Pate, Mr. and Pate, you know,
that's
they
true.
could both kind of come back. So
that's true.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, I'm sure that was in his mind.
Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of really cool things that he could do. He had that howl of the hunter, that pretty much was a fear-based spell, and I think he hit Orem. I think Orem and Ashton failed their roles for that. Oh my god!
You could tell
he was so mad.
He was so mad. Taliesin was not very happy about having to.
He was so mad.
And you know, again, that's the realness of D&D popping out, like when you can't do your stuff anymore because of something that happened. So I was really I thought it was really great the way and also, to take this back, I have to say one of the first things that I thought was really cool is that Laura casts fly, because she's like, I gotta make sure that I'm not gonna get hit. And so she's flying around. But I thought one of the really cool things was when Orem finally did get an action, he ran up and starts talking to him and saying, you know, hey, big guy, you know, like, if you're in there, and he shows him the little carving that he'd been working on. And I was like, that's such a good way of like trying to pull him back in. And I think that got Travis a little bit. And so just being able to do stuff like that. And then again, mechanic and story, right? Like when he did that and he fails a saving throw, Matt took stuff away. And like the more they were able to not just do damage to him, it was more about reaching him. Right. Then the abilities started falling away. Like he lost legendary resistance and things like that. So it was really well done as far as like how to handle it from a mechanic perspective.
Well, the two really squishy characters got up and away as much as they could. Imogen flew up and was holding on to vines or ivy, and then as quickly as Laudna could, she cast spider climb and tried to, skid her up and away
Yeah.
as much as she could.
In her
So
form of dread too, to make sure.
in her
Yeah.
form, yeah, in her form of dread, and I think that was great because he could have took one swipe at them. With as strong as he was and as hard as he was hitting some of the other characters, it would have been really bad if they had turned around and had another person dead, especially Laudna, because her and Imogen have so few hit points, or health
Yeah.
points. So, I think
Well,
that it was very smart of them
It
to
was.
try. Then they have ranged spells, so why not? Right?
That's exactly
And
right.
Matt, I love
Yep.
how Matt like dropped in. Oh yeah, they're within jumping range, and they're like, "Shut up, Matt."
Yep. Well, you said
Just reminding
that's the other
him.
thing I really like about it is like they were leveling the playing field and making it fair. Like as much as that's the case, Travis was not afraid to go actually out there and
No.
fight people. He really went after Ashley a bit, and then like she turns into the sexy lady wolf.
A sexy wolf that looks like a fox because a sexy wolf is a fox, right? Like
I mean, what else would it be, right? Like sexy wolf is a fox.
And she's like, and I want to be a sexy wolf. I mean, come on. Like, hey, big guy. Let's distract him in the middle of, of this like blindless rage with Foxtail.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just crazy. But I mean, he ended up losing a legendary action. So maybe it really did work. In all that craziness.
Yep. I think it was probably just the fact that it was turned like more than anything.
And it was funny,
It was really funny.
Gotta give her props for thinking about it.
It's
so stupid though.
Again, D&D. People do stupid stuff.
The whole time I'm like, what is she? What?
It's funny.
A sexy wolf. Oh, okay.
Oh man, so little by little they start wearing him down. I think she also casts. They realize that like he's got a part of his heart's got that like sort of red smoke coming from it.
Yes,
and that's sort of like that spirit energy almost leaving him. She casts light on it daylight on it at some point.
Right, Orem threw a dagger.
Yep.
Orem threw a dagger to the middle of where the red stuff was coming out. And then she cast daylight on the dagger.
Yeah. Well, I think, it was sort of that attempt to like maybe counteract the moonlight or whatever it might have been. I don't know. But worked for what it needed to do. And they were blinded him a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
all I know is I was yelling at the TV, he's not a vampire.
that's
vampire.
That's because Sam's spiritual weapon was a steak.
Oh my
and he's
God,
like, that's a steak. And I saw it, and I think everybody else saw it.
Steak.
He was talking about like the actual steak that you eat, like as a way of saying, "Hey, here's a steak." Like, like it would have been really funny, but no, he was like, "What do you mean steaks don't work on werewolves too?" It's like, no, that's a fire thing. No, werewolves, it's a silver steak,
silver bullet, or a silver something that penetrates their heart.
Yeah, so funny.
Oh my goodness!
But
a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
Really, because I think, it could have been so bad, but I think because of the nature of it and because it was Travis, like he was just having such a good time with it. And so even though it was really dangerous and it was really crazy and there was death could have really happened, they had a good time with it. So
it totally fitted Chetney too. It fit like his character of wanting to be the awesome, badass wolf, but also being sort of the grumpy old guy, but also being the funny guy, comic relief. So yeah, pretty funny.
Yeah. And then of course, like Orem is holding on to him, like at one point he climbs on him and is holding on. Yeah. And so they're both blinded by the daylight, which is crazy.
Thought of this little halfling grappling this
massive.
Excuse me. The thought of this little halfling grappling this massive werewolf pet creatures is really funny.
Yeah.
And then like
Yeah.
as he's jumping, he's kind of like going with them. It was pretty great. So I mean, there was a lot of back and forth and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, like he ends up being able to control himself, and then shrinks back down to normal size. And
I
then
think
that's
Laudna
when
came in clutch and cast darkness over the hole.
oh, that's right. Yeah. So that was the
Yeah.
other big thing, right?
Kind of
So
cut off the
so
moonlight so he
cut off
could
the
come
light.
to himself a little bit, He
So I
shrunk down
feel
in
like
size.
that was when like that sort of was giving him the control over himself again. But also I feel like there were a couple things that were mentioned about like whether or not his control was going to be there during Ruinous or not. Like I don't remember if it was
He
like what was actually said around that.
he when it was finally over, he actually kept saying he still wanted to be manacled. I
Yeah,
think
that's right.
because
Yeah.
he's worried. But everybody else, including Annalyn, kept saying you're going to be fine. So I think he is more concerned than everybody else is.
I think it's
So,
smart to like take the precaution
yeah,
basically. And,
I agree.
but hopefully it's fine, I think it was a really good episode of sort of wrapping up a few things, but then also leading us down a couple other paths. One thing that was great is toward the end of that, and when everything's starting to wrap up, they're like, I'm gonna go out and run they're heading out to go run in the wild, streaking as
Going
nature
streak.
intended, I guess. But during that, it was Aurum that kind of hangs back a little bit with the statue, and I think Fern stays back too.
A little bit, yeah.
He sort of notices that there is a scabbard for a sword, and when he looks at it a little closer, he sees that there is a spot where he can go in there, and he smells a little bit of something that reminds him of his husband that had passed.
Yeah.
And so that's when he sort of goes, okay, something's kind of giving me a hint here. And so he takes his sword and puts it into the scabbard in the statue. And then it sort of almost like sparks a little green energy and starts growing these vines around his hand. And he kind of like, pulls the sword out, and those vines kind of grow to become like a basket hill guard. It's really cool.
Yes.
Just leveled up that weapon.
Super awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it was already a magical weapon. It was like an heirloom item or something. But I would be really interested to see what the stats on it are now.
Yeah.
Because it was such a cool process.
Yeah.
That Matt incorporated, like I thought that was such a cool thing, especially with the presence of Will, the scent of Will. He felt the presence of him, and then the wild mother, like just this overwhelming sense of, this is something that I should do, and just did it, which I think that's the thing too, is like you got to follow your intuition and kind of where it's leading you, and it led him to, even though his sword didn't fit, putting it in the scabbard, and it leveled, he got a addition to it. So
yeah, and I'm not sure it was a magical sword before. I think it was a very finely made, like masterwork crafted.
Maybe it's magic.
I don't know for sure. Yeah, but I think it is. And what I was going to say is, I think that it's an underused way mechanically for DMs that want to have magic weapons in the game, or to reward players with magic weapons. You don't always have to have them in a chest somewhere that they find, or like in treasure somewhere, or for purchase. Doing something like that transforms something that they already have into something more is a really cool way of making that weapon, what you would have given them had you given them another +1 sword or whatever it is. Right. So I think it's cool. It's also, sort of goes down that same thing that he did with the messages in campaign 1 and what's now in the book and stuff, where over time new abilities for the item unlock, rather than it just being like, this is what the item can do forever. So I'm also wondering if over time other abilities will come from the sword, like as he learns more
Right.
about it, or if other things happen after you attune to it or whatever it is.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, and
Um,
and looking at it, from a game mechanic, he's got to balance everything he's giving the players.
yeah,
And so, Orem doesn't really have a lot of magic per se, just a little smidge. And so his main thing is he's a fighter and his weapons. So, he's enhancing that as he goes along. So I think it's really, really well done. He's giving little bits it through the storyline versus us just starting a game and then saying, "Oh yeah, you got so and so and so and so."
yeah,
He's making it a story plot. So,
I agree. I agree.
which I think
So
is cool.
then he finally gets Fern. He's like, Fern, we gotta go. We gotta catch up with the rest of
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
he starts running, but then Fern stays back
Yeah.
and actually leaves a little like donation
She flicks
at
some
the
coins.
statue. I know,
Yes.
which is completely like we were talking about at the beginning, kind of like goes out of her character, but toward her character a little bit, like kind of saying,
Yeah.
"Oh well, I owe you a little bit." So
Well,
I
she
thought it
was
was
like, that
really
was
cool.
fun,
Yeah,
like that was a
exactly.
great
Yeah,
time.
yeah. So I think she'd already turned back from her sexy fox form when she did it. So I think so. So then she heads back
We
out
didn't
there,
talk.
and
Yeah, we didn't. Hopefully so.
I hope so, because I don't know how she would have gotten the coin. But well, I guess that's another. Yeah, her marsupial
marsupial
fox
pouch.
pouch. Yeah. Oh man.
Oh,
So yeah, interesting stuff. It sounds like it was a really good, landed on an upbeat, I think, as far as the way they ended that one. So I'm looking forward to where they're going to go next. I guess they're going to have to catch up with their airship and continue on their journey. So
yeah.
really good one.
So it's been what? They've really only been there, 2 days maybe? They spent
I
overnight.
think
But then they did travel. Did they have 2 nights of travel? I'm
might
trying to
have
think of
been
how long it's been since
might
they've
have been
been
two
at
more
the airship.
nights. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it
So
may have
really it
been
was like
since they got there 3 or 4 days. I don't know.
okay. I was just trying to think in the grand scheme of their time frame, like
Yeah,
they've got some things they've got to get accomplished.
they do have some things to accomplish, but yeah, we'll catch it this Thursday. So
Yep.
thanks everybody for sticking with us for another episode of Critical Cafe. We will see you next time, and have a great week.